Oh, greetings, everyone, and welcome to God Save the King. I am your host, Tim Kais. Thank you for listening to God Save the King on the Truth Be Told radio network, where you can hear my show every Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, today, I'm going to do something a little bit different, and I want to jump right into it today because there's a lot of ground to cover, and I'm really excited about what I have to share with you today. But I will remind you that here at God Save the King, what we do is we rescue truth from familiarity, primarily with regard to the nativity story. If you've never listened to my show before, I talk 90% of the time, I talk about the nativity because the traditional nativity story is frankly not very accurate, both biblically and historically, and we need to rescue the real nativity story, the true nativity story, from this overt familiarity that we have, which is frankly and sadly not really correct. But we're going to talk about something a little bit different today. It is definitely interrelated. This is a lesson or a lecture or whatever you want to call it, that I hope you are going to find as revolutionary as I did. This was something that I had to search out from the Bible myself. No one taught me this. And I'll tell you very quickly the story behind the lecture that I'm going to give today, the information that we're going to cover today. And that is, there's a buzz phrase out there in Christianity. There's a buzz phrase. And you've probably heard it. If you are a follower of Jesus Christ, because interesting, we're going to talk about that. Whether it's probably more appropriate to call yourself a follower of Jesus Christ than it is to call yourself a Christian. Because if you're identifying yourself as a Christian, you might be identifying yourself with the Christian religion. And that's not what being a follower of Christ is necessarily about. Now, some of you are scratching your head and going, what are you talking about? Well, let me tell you, because here's the buzz phrase. This is the buzz phrase. The buzz phrase goes like this: Christianity is not a religion, it's a relationship. Now, how many of you out there have heard that before? Go ahead and raise your hands. Or just one, not two if you're driving, right? So that is a buzz phrase that is common throughout Christianity. And I heard it for years. I heard it as a punchline in more sermons than I care to count. And frankly, there was a time period there where I was frankly hearing it every week. But you know what happened? And this tells you a little bit about God Save the King. This tells you a little bit about me as a person. And that is, I am not one of these people who is satisfied with the textbook answer. I'm not satisfied with the surface level answer. I want to know. I want to understand. So whenever I would hear this buzz phrase used, Christianity is not a religion, it's a relationship. And the congregation, the audience, would inevitably respond by going, oh my word, oh, that's so deep. Oh, my word. I mean, Pastor is really on today, isn't he? I mean, man, what an amazing statement. Christianity is not a religion, it's a relationship. It's not an organization, it's an organism. Okay, great. Now stop right where you're at. I want you to stop right there, and I want you to unpack that. I want you to unpack it. Take that statement and unpack it so a 12-year-old can understand it. Because if you can't do that, then all that is a buzz phrase. That is all that is a buzz phrase. If you can't unpack it, you're using it as an applause line. See, and what I did, and I'm not going to name names, but what I did is I went to a wide variety of pastors and teachers and ministers, and I said exactly that. I said, hey, I love that phrase. I really want to understand that. Can you help me understand that at a deeper level? Can you explain that to me at a deeper level? And you know what? No one could. No one could. Now, part of the reason is because relationships are by definition experiential. All right. Now that freaks a lot of followers of Jesus out. Okay, that it's experiential. And let me rephrase. That freaks a lot of Christians out. Okay, that freaks a lot of people out when you say that Christianity is supposed to be experiential in nature, because it is. The Bible is not simply a textbook that if you follow the rules in the textbook, that therefore you have achieved the goal of Christianity. The Bible is there to introduce you to a person. That person's name is Jesus of Nazareth, often called Jesus Christ, Jesus the Messiah, Jesus the Anointed One, the Messiah of Israel and the Savior of the world. Okay, he is alive and well and seated at the right hand of God, and you can have an active relationship with him. But that requires experience. That is not done through a textbook. The textbook is there to introduce you to the person. Now you have to engage in certain activities and practices described by the textbook to actually develop the relationship. The relationship is experiential. So that's part of why you couldn't get an answer to it, is because there's an experiential component that, frankly, you have to do yourself. You do. You have to become, quote unquote, a self-expert in understanding the Bible and in a relationship with Jesus, because no one can do it for you. If you don't do it, it will not happen. Just like you can't have a relationship with your spouse or your children or your parents or your best friend or your coworker or whoever. You cannot have a relationship with them unless that relationship is experiential by definition. It has to be. It means you got to spend time together. It means you got to talk to each other. It means you got to ask questions. It means you got to listen when the other person is talking, etc., etc., etc. And doing that, here you go. Here's part of the answer. Doing that with with an invisible God, right, who does not appear materially in front of your face except on special occasions, or you don't tend to hear audible voices. That's not, I mean, the Bible describes that, but even in the Bible, that's pretty rare. So what does this relationship look like and how does it work? Okay, well, like I said, a lot of that you have to do on your own, just like you have to develop, you have to cultivate, there's a good word. You have to cultivate a relationship with your spouse, your husband, or your wife. It doesn't just happen simply because you're sitting in the same room together. You have to engage each other. You have to talk to each other. You've got to say what you mean and mean what you say. And then you've got to listen. And you've got to listen in order to understand, not just listen in order to reply. Okay? These are critical skills in any relationship. So that means you have to do the same thing with God. And God is invisible. You can't see him, you can't hear him, you can't taste him, you can't touch him, you can't smell him with the 5 material realm senses. God is a spirit being. He lives in the spirit realm, which means you have to see, for lack of a better word, with your spiritual eyes, hear with your spiritual ears, etc., etc. These are all common phrases that we hear, and sometimes they're limited. They are limited by our experience, right? But what I want to talk about today is I want to help your understanding. I want to help your background understanding of the distinction between a religion and a relationship. And it's in the Bible. You can find it in the Bible if you know what to look for. Now, one more thing I want to say about what we're going to talk about today is that this is a multi-layered and multi-dimensional teaching or lecture or whatever it is you want to call it. You can approach this information from many different angles and at many different levels. On one hand, it will stand alone by itself, and you can go, wow, that was really cool. I'm really glad he taught me that, and now I know something new about the Bible today. But the part of the reason I'm sharing what I'm sharing today is that I absolutely intend, frankly, to take this much deeper. I want to use what I'm sharing today as the foundation and the springboard to take you deeper into not only this subject, but other subjects, other interrelated subjects that will help you understand the Bible. So before we get into that, let me cover a little bit of business. This is social media, so you know what that means. If you would please, if you're watching this on Facebook, would you please hit that like button, right? Whether you're watching it on my Facebook page or whether you're watching it on the Truth Be Told Radio Network Facebook page, please hit that like button. Go to my page, go to their page. Please like and follow us. Same with YouTube. Go to my YouTube channel. Go to the other. One just popped up, right? Go to my YouTube channel. Go to the Truth Be Told Radio Network YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button. You know how this works. It really helps us out. It triggers those algorithms, right, and helps get our information out to more people. And just it gives us more exposure to get this information out there, because what I'm sharing you today, this is actually life-changing information. If you apply what I'm going to share today, it can and will change your life. It really will. Honestly, it really will. Because like I said, this is something I discovered because I asked. And who did I? But you'll notice I said in my introduction, I asked preachers and teachers and ministers about this, and they couldn't answer. So who did I ask? I asked God. Okay, and thankfully, I have a pretty good knowledge and understanding of the Bible, and therefore he was able to lead me to certain things, right? But most of this I had to put together simply by, I didn't read books. I didn't read books about this, right? I didn't listen to lectures about this. I didn't look at YouTube videos. This was me and God figuring it out, right? And him telling me, well, look at this, look at that, compare this, compare that. What does that mean? Ask yourself this question, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so let's get into that right now. One last thing before we move on. The Truth Be Told Radio Network is sponsored by GSK's Carbon 60. Greska's Carbon 60, which is a dietary supplement designed to balance pH and detoxify the body at the cellular and mitochondrial levels. So if you want to check that out, go to www.c-60.com. That's Greska's Carbon 60 at www.c-60.com. Okay, so now let's talk about this. So here is the paradigm that is in front of us. This is what I want to start to share with you. Now recognize, like I said, you can approach this at many different levels. There's going to be a surface level, and then another level, another level, another level, and another level. And you can take this as deep as you want to take it. And this is foundational information that will help you unpack the distinction between a religion and a relationship, remembering what I already said, which is that the Bible is intended to introduce you to a person, but it's introducing you to a person that is not knowable by the material senses except in extraordinary circumstances. right? Now, I say that as a spirit-filled believer who believes in the gifts of the Spirit and visions and dreams and things like that. I'm a big proponent of dreams. I dream all the time, and I believe those dreams are given to me by God, and I use the Bible as my, here we go, textbook to help me interpret the dreams that I believe God gives me. But that's part of what a relationship looks like. That's God speaking to me, and therefore but he's speaking to me in code. Okay. Dreams are almost always symbolic, and therefore it's a type of code, and you have to decipher what it means. But these are just examples of it is a relationship. You've got to talk to God, and then you have to study the scripture to know, what does it mean to hear back? Okay. How does God speak in general? And then how does God speak to me? And how can I recognize that? And then how can I understand what he's telling me? Okay. So here we go. Let's talk about this. So what is the distinction between a religion and a relationship? Well, one of the ways we can understand this is by looking at the fact that every major religion in the history of the world can be broken down into 5 major components. Okay, let me repeat that. Every major religion in the world can be broken down into 5 major components. Now, and fundamental components. Let me give you a big caveat, however. A lot of modern religions, this is not true for, only because they have evolved over time, and the modern version of the religion no longer includes an ancient component. So you do have to find the ancient roots of a modern religion in order to make this template work. Without that, this template will not work, and you're going to be emailing me and go, see, you're wrong. That doesn't really say that. Rubber. Okay. But these are the 5 major components. Ready? Here we go. 5, count with me. Number 1, the sacred space. And I'll define what that means in a second. Number 2, the holy man or woman. Number 3, the sacred code. Number 4, the sacred ritual. And then number 5, the blood sacrifice. Those are the 5 major components of every ancient world religion. And that's what we're going to look at today, and probably next week, and probably the week after, because like I said, you can take this as deep as you want. Now, as we get into this, let me add one other thing. You can use this template as a method for helping you understand the entire Bible from beginning to end. And I highly recommend it. This would be one method, and a very effective method, of deciphering the whole Bible from beginning to end by taking this template and laying it over whatever you're reading, and then asking yourself, and thereby asking God, asking the Holy Spirit to reveal to you the answer to certain questions. So here is one of the questions, several of the questions that I recommend. There are more, but play around with these for a minute and see where it gets you. Also, remember, this is not something that's going to happen overnight. This isn't going to, I take that back. It might revolutionize your relationship with God overnight, but that's between you and God. For most people, this is going to take some time. All right. You're going to have to apply the information that I'm sharing with you today, and take some time to apply it and see what changes it makes in your life. So once again, 5 major components, right? 5, 5, 5. Number 1, sacred space. Number 2, the holy man or woman. Number 3, the sacred code. Number 4, the sacred ritual. And then number 5, the blood sacrifice. Now, here's one of the questions you want to ask yourself, or ask God, frankly, right? What is the origin, mission, and destiny of each of these components? In other words, where did they come from? How do they apply to me now? And where will they be in the future? Where is it going in the future? In other words, if you were to research just the concept of a sacred space, right? Just that alone, where did the concept come from? How do we understand it and apply it right now? and then where is the concept going in the future, right? And then and ultimately, right? And ultimately, how does the concept of a sacred space fit into the concept of eternity? Okay, there's a great question for you. So do that with sacred space, and then do it for holy man, holy woman. Where did it come from? Where is it right now? And then where's it going, right? Sacred code. Where did it come from? Where is it now? Where's it going? Ritual, right? I'm going to give you a heads up. By ritual, I mean calendar. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then finally, blood sacrifice. There's a study for you. Where did the concept of blood sacrifice come from? Okay. It's common throughout all humanity. Every major ancient world religion utilized blood sacrifice. So where did that come from? Where did the concept of blood sacrifice come from? Where is it now, and where is it going in the future? Okay, so let's talk about each one of these individually here for a minute. So what do I mean when I say a sacred space? Okay, well, a sacred space is exactly that. It is a literal geophysical space. Geophysical space. A literal geophysical space, most often in the material realm. You could refer to the spiritual realm as a geophysical space, I suppose, right? Because that's part of what we're delving into. But it's a geophysical space. Now, it can be something very large. It could be an entire country. It could be a city. It could be a mountain. It could be a river, okay? But a sacred space could also be something rather small, such as a specific location in a grove of trees or in the desert, right? And sometimes a sacred space is identified by a marker, such as a sacred stone or a totem pole or something like that, okay? So you kind of get the idea. It's a literal geophysical sacred space. Now, the most common sacred space, however, is a building that has been specifically set apart and dedicated for religious purposes. Now, these buildings have a variety of names. They're known as temples, they're known as shrines, they're known as synagogues, they're known as mosques, they're known as churches. Okay? So it's a literal geophysical sacred space. It might be a mountain, a city, a river. It might be marked by a stone or a totem pole, but more often than not, it's a building, and that building has been dedicated and separated and set aside for religious purposes. Now, this is an important point. This is in distinction to everything else. A sacred space is in contrast to the not so sacred space, the common space, the ordinary space, or the profane space. In other words, so very common concept that generically everybody will understand. You quote unquote, you go to church to worship. You go to the special building, and then you go in the building, and that's where you commune with God, right? Now, that concept is in the Bible. However, it requires a lot of unpacking, and that's part of what we're talking about today, is what's the difference between a religion and a relationship. Well, you got to unpack the concept of a sacred space and where it was, where it is now, and where it's headed, to understand the distinction between a religion and a relationship. Now, one more thing about this literal geophysical space. Sometimes the space itself is then subdivided into additional spaces within the sacred space, okay? So, for example, we've all heard the phrase inner sanctum, okay? Well, sanctum, that's the Latin word for holy, right? So the inner sanctum means the holier space within the space that we're talking about, right? So when you go within a sacred space, or you go to a sacred space, there might be a subdivision that is, at least in theory, holier than the other, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, okay? So really quick summary of just the sacred space there. It's a literal geophysical space, right? But it is set apart from other geophysical spaces for religious purposes. It can be big, it can be small, it can have a variety of names, but it's set apart for God's use, and it's typically where you're supposed to go to meet with God and commune with God, things like that. Say, okay, so there's component number one. Now, component number two is the holy man or woman. Okay. Now, I'm going to use the phrase inclusively, the holy man. All right. So from here on out, I'm going to say holy man, and I'm not going to say holy woman over and over and over again, just to satisfy the politically correct. The noun is inclusive, and it refers to both sexes, holy man or holy woman, priest or priestess. See, now there is a clue, right? So in a similar fashion to the sacred space, a holy man is someone who is set apart from the ordinary or common or secular or profane man, because they are a religious official, right? Okay, so let me say that again. The holy man or woman, right, is set apart from the common man, the commoner, right, or the secular man. They believe in God, they follow God, they serve God, right? So they are typically religious officials, right? And then one of the names, of course, is a priest, or if it's female, it's a priestess, right? Many ancient religions excluded women from the priesthood. Some ancient religions excluded men from the priesthood. Generally speaking, you have examples of both all over the map, ancient and modern, right? So even though many cultures are patriarchal in nature, you still do find holy women very much interconnected into their religious system. But they can be called a priest, a priestess, a rabbi, an imam, a guru, a shaman, etc. They've got a wide variety of names, but at the end of the day, it all boils down to the same concept. You've got a holy man or a holy woman that is set apart and dedicated to religious purposes, right? And that they are separate and different from the commoner or the common man or the what we would call the laity, right? So that's what I want to talk about next, is that by definition, you've got, see, like in the sacred space, you've got the sacred space and then the non-sacred space, right? Now here with the holy man, you've got the holy man and the non-holy man. So there is a distinction and a contrast within the component itself, right? And then there's a breakdown within the component. In the sacred space, you might have an inner sanctum and then an inner sanctum that is theoretically more holy than the larger area. It usually keeps getting smaller, is the idea. So you have the same concept here, in that oftentimes you have a breakdown within the component of the holy man that is frankly what's known as a hierarchy, okay? And so the hierarchy is, you've got the largest group of people and then a subset and then a subset and then a subset and then a subset, okay? So, and sometimes you only have two classifications. That classification would be clergy and laity, right? Clergy and laity, the clergy being those who are initiated into being a religious official, and then the laity, the commoner, being everybody else, right? Okay. But for example, in Roman Catholicism, okay, for example, you've got the laity, then you've got the priests, that's the subset, and then you've got the bishops, and then you've got the cardinal, and then you've got the pope. Okay. Now, I'm not sharing that because I'm exalting the model. I'm sharing it because it's a convenient model. We'll talk more about this in a second. So let's move on to the next component, because then what I'll do is I'll talk more about each of these components in a minute and give you a better description. So far, we're doing mostly definition. I'll give you description in a moment. Okay. So now you've got the sacred code. So once again, this is a very similar concept, because now you have a code, right, that is set apart and different than all the other codes, right? It can be a written code. So in other words, it can be written down in a book, or it can be an oral code that is transmitted orally, right? So once again, so just like with the sacred space, you had temple, shrine, synagogue, church, mosque, etc. Then with the holy man, you've got laity, clergy, right? Then you've got priest, high priest. You've got these levels, right? So you got the same thing here. You've got the non-sacred code, and then you've got the sacred code. And you have a lot of different names. Right now, you have a bunch of different names as well. So here we've got the Bible, we've got the Torah, the Quran, the Vedas, the Sutras, etc. Those are the written books. Then you've got the oral codes, the Mishnah, the Sunnah, the Hadith, the Native American oral tradition, the Nordic oral tradition, and these codes, these books, whether it's a literal written book or not, and remembering that it's set apart and it's distinct from an ordinary book. This is the holy book, right? They can be they can be either a list of divine ordinances, or it can be a sacred story, or it can be a combination of both. Okay, a list of divine ordinances, a sacred story, or a combination of both. And like I said, Bible, Torah, Quran, Veda, Sutra, most of those are both, right? They're both a list of ordinances and a sacred story. But once again, it's set apart from all other ordinary or profane or secular books, right? Or codes. We're using the word code because the word code can therefore refer to the oral tradition because it's not written down. It's not technically a book. So we'll call it a code. All right. So once again, sacred space, literal geophysical space set apart from other spaces, holy man or woman, but set apart from the commoner or the laity, right? Now you have a sacred code. So you've got a special book or a special story that is set apart from everything else. The code is God's word as opposed to man's word. It is God's law as opposed to man's law, right? So you get the idea. All of these contrasts and distinction between what is sacred and what is not. Now that brings us to the sacred ritual. Now I'm using the word ritual in a broad sense. What I'm going to do for an example is use something specific, acknowledging that there could be other rituals. This is one example of a ritual. It's one of the most common methods of ritual that I'm aware of, and therefore it makes the best example because you will find it in the most religions. And that is a sacred calendar. All right? Because very simply, we recognize that the word holiday is a contraction of the two words holy day. A holiday is a holy day. So once again, very similar concept here. The sacred calendar means that there are special days that are set apart from all other quote unquote regular days or common days that are the special days when you do religious things that are devoted to God. Okay. And obviously we're going to recognize the word Sabbath. That's the word that's used in the Bible. And then different religions select different days of the week. It's commonly mentioned the fact that the Muslims, their Sabbath, quote unquote, is Friday. The Jewish Sabbath is Saturday, and then the Christian Sabbath is Sunday. Now, there's a whole lot of unpacking to do there. So if you're out there going, wait, time out, wait, you're okay. I know, there's a lot of unpacking, right? But the point being is that there's special days that according to the sacred calendar, there are these special days that are set apart for divine or religious or sacred purposes, as opposed to a regular day that is not set apart and it's just a regular day, right? Okay, so here we go. Sacred space, holy man, sacred code, sacred calendar, and now you've got the blood sacrifice, right? Now, blood sacrifice, it's very uncommon today unless you're in a very secluded part of the world where they're keeping it secret. and there are parts of the world where it is done commonly. It's just that we don't pay attention to it and we don't put it out there for everyone to see, despite the fact that it can be pretty prominent in certain parts of the world. But once again, if you trace it back to its ancient roots, every major religion at some point practiced literal blood sacrifice. Now, by saying that, part of what I'm implying is I'm implying an animal sacrifice. But believe it or not, pretty much every major world religion is rooted and grounded in human sacrifice. Right? I know that's going to alarm people, but it's true. And they're going to say, oh, no, not my religion. Oh, yeah, your religion. That's part of where I want to go next week or the week after or something like that, is to demonstrate the fact that every major world religion is rooted and grounded in human sacrifice. Because frankly, part of what that's demonstrating is how backward the human race is. Okay. And this is why we need God, why we need a source outside ourselves, is because if we do it, we're going to screw it up. We're going to goof it up. And we've proven that because we have engaged in human sacrifice in the past. That was never something God asked us to do. It was something we invented, right? But that's for later. That's for later. But this sharing will help you understand the template so that when I explain where they came from, because remember our questions are, okay, where did it come from? Where is it now? And then where's it going, right? So when it comes to the sacrifice, of course, that's a literal blood sacrifice. It means the death, and usually by some form of cutting, right? Hence blood, right? Even though some sacrifices were burned, they usually cut their throat first, usually, right? Because it was a blood sacrifice and it meant the death of a sacrificial animal or a sacrificial person, right? So now let's put this all together, because this is how religion works, right? This is how ancient religions worked. And then now that you have a template and you can understand that over the centuries and millennia that the practice may have evolved so that it's not literally this anymore, but that this is the understanding that's in the background. Okay. Now you can take and look at a modern religion and go, oh, I see. I understand where it came from. Maybe they don't do that literally anymore, right? Like it's very common in many modern world religions for wine to represent blood. So we don't actually kill an animal anymore, but they drink wine, right, for religious purposes because it symbolizes blood, right? So there's just one very simple example of how over the centuries and millennia or a religion could evolve, and that there's no longer a literal blood sacrifice, but it is in the ancient version, okay? Now, how does this work, right? Well, it's really pretty simple. And that's the whole purpose for this sharing, is to help you see this very simple model so that then we can take this model and we can pull it apart and we can look at it and we can examine it and we can ask those questions I was talking about, which is, okay, where did this come from? Where is it now? And then where's it going in the future, right? So the way this works is that the model is that the holy man performs the blood sacrifice in the sacred space on the sacred day according to the rules of the sacred code. Okay, let me say that again. The holy man performs the blood sacrifice in the sacred space on the holy day according to the sacred code. There it is. That is the fundamental equation of all human religion. And that is what you need to understand in order to now see the contrast between a religion and a relationship. Okay? Because this is what helped me get there. It should help you get there to understand what it was, what it is, and where it's headed, what it was, and then what it is. Okay? So now that you have a broad understanding of the 5 parts, let me talk you through where we see this in the Bible and how, once again, it, for lack of a better word, evolves over time, right? It evolves over time. So if we look at each of these in the Bible, right? Where is the sacred space in the Bible? Okay, in the Old Testament, right? Well, the classic example is either the tabernacle or the temple. Okay, when Moses came down off Mount Sinai, right, he had a set of clay tablets, of stone tablets, under one arm, and he had a set of blueprints under the other arm. God gave him instructions on how to build this portable sanctuary where the worship would happen, and that became known as the tabernacle of Moses. Then later on, Solomon built a temple, a permanent version, after the same fundamental model. But so in the Old Testament, there's your sacred space. Your sacred space is the tabernacle or the temple. Now, there's more to it than that. And if I get a second, we'll talk more about that. But there's your fundamental component at any rate. Now, what about holy man, right? Well, in the Old Covenant, the holy men were the tribe of Levi, and then the Aaronic priests, Aaron, and then the sons of Aaron, and then the high priest, right? Let me back up the sacred space, right? The sacred space, as I described earlier on, is subdivided. Okay, the tabernacle of Moses had an outer court, and then the holy place, and then the Holy of Holies inside. So the Holy of Holies, that's the holiest place in the tabernacle. So it's got that inner sanctum thing going that we were talking about. Now, when we're talking about the holy man, you've got the hierarchy, like I was talking about. You've got, number one, you've got the whole nation of Israel that is set apart from everybody else. By the way, this is what it means when the Bible calls Israel God's chosen people. Okay? They are chosen to be an example. Okay, it's not because they themselves are automatically holier than anybody else. No, they are set apart for God's purposes and for God's demonstration and example, right? So you've got everybody else, you got the Gentiles, the nations, then you've got the nation of Israel, and then within the nation of Israel, you'll have the 12 tribes. One of those tribes is the tribe of Levi, and then within the Levites, you have the sons of Aaron, and then among the sons of Aaron, you have the high priest, right? So now you see the breakdown again. So moving on, right? So, we've talked about sacred space, the tabernacle, outer court, holy place, holy of holies. Now you've got the holy man, you've got the nation of Israel, the tribe of Levi, the sons of Aaron, and then the high priest, right? Well, now you get the sacred code, right? Well, the sacred code very simply is the Tanakh, the Old Testament, the New Testament, right? The Brit Hadashah, right? And then, of course, the Torah, right? You'll hear lots of people talk about the Torah because the Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible. It's the most fundamental component there is, right? But then, just by means of interesting insight, you've also got the stone tablets themselves, right? Okay. And then, so that's your sacred code. And then, so it's the Bible. In other words, it's the Bible, right? For our purposes, it's the Bible, the Old and the New Testament, right? We're looking primarily at the Old Testament model because what's going to happen is when we look at the Old Testament model and then we look at Jesus and then we look at the New Covenant, the New Testament, things change. And that's the point. Things change. Revelation is progressive from Old Testament through Jesus to the New Covenant, right? So then you've got the calendar. Now, the Jews, right, all through the Old Covenant had all manner of holidays, all kinds of holy days. They had the year of Jubilee. They had the sabbatical year. They had the new moon festival. They had the weekly Sabbath. And then, of course, they had the seven annual Hebrew feasts that they were supposed to celebrate, 3 of which were required feasts, right? So you've got Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of First Fruits, the Feast of Pentecost, the Day of Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, and then the Feast of Tabernacles are the 7 primary Hebrew feasts. Then you can add in Hanukkah and Purim if you want, right? So under the Old Covenant, you can find all of this in the Bible. You can find all of this in the Old Testament. The sacred space, the holy man, the sacred code, and now the sacred calendar. And what was that question I told you to ask? Where did it come from? Where is it now? And where's it going? These 5 components and those 3 questions will keep you busy for the rest of your life. What a fabulous way to unpack the entire Bible. Okay? There it is. Now lastly, you've got the blood sacrifice, right? So for the blood sacrifice, once again, if you look at the Old Testament, you have all manner of blood sacrifices specified for different things. You've got the sin offering, you've got the guilt offering, you've got the whole burnt offering, you've got peace offerings. Okay, and the vast majority of them are blood, but then they also did grain offerings. They did libation offerings. In other words, literally they just pour out water, right? They pour out water as an offering to God, things like that. But it's all rooted and grounded in this notion of a blood sacrifice. So now that we've done an extremely quick blow through of the Old Testament and demonstrating that you've got the Hebrew sacred space, the Hebrew holy man, the Hebrew sacred code, the Hebrew calendar, and the Hebrew method of blood sacrifice. Now, once again, let's put them all together again, right? Because you had an individual system of atonement, and then you had a corporate system of atonement under the old covenant. So the individual system would be if me, you, whoever, the individual believer, right, committed a sin, then what you would do is you would take an animal sacrifice, right, to the temple or the tabernacle or the Levitical city. See, there's the sacred space where you would be met by a priest from the tribe of Levi and the order of Aaron who would officiate the sacrifice and make atonement as a mediator. I forgot to mention that earlier, and that is the holy man in this understanding is a mediator. That's very important. I shouldn't have forgotten that. The holy man is a mediator because the common man, okay, under this system doesn't communicate with God directly. He goes through a mediator, and that mediator is the priest, okay, or the priestess, and other religions do it a little bit differently. But the broad strokes here, the broad strokes remain the same. So if you're the commoner, then you've got to go to the priest because you got to go to the mediator because you got to offer sacrifice for your sin. And then you've got to do it at a special day and special time. And then you have to do it according to the sacred code, right? So you've got all 5 components here, right? You've got the sacrificial animal, the blood sacrifice. You've got the holy man. You've got the sacred code. You've got the calendar. And then you've got what am I missing? Sacred space, holy man, code, calendar, and then blood sacrifice, right? That's for the individual. And then for the nation of Israel, they had a corporate system. And you know where we're going with this because we've already talked about it. When you put it all together, right, this is what the Day of Atonement is all about in the Old Testament, okay? Because now you've got every component here, but it's for the corporate nation, right? Because so it represents all of the people. So in other words, it represents the 12 tribes, right? But then you've got the high priest, right? Because 12 tribes, Levites, sons of Aaron, high priest. So the high priest takes the blood of the blood sacrifice and he goes into not only the holy place, but the Holy of Holies and stands before the Ark of the Covenant, which is in the Holy of Holies. And by the way, has the stone tablets inside it, and he sprinkles the blood on the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. And he's only allowed to do that one day a year according to the sacred calendar. See? So this is really important to understand. So on the Day of Atonement, right, according to the Torah, in the land of Israel, in the city of Jerusalem, in the temple, in the Holy of Holies, the high priest on only one day a year would sprinkle sacrificial blood on the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, which contains the sacred text that describes the ceremony that they are engaging in. So there's every piece, the sacred space, the holy man, the sacred code, the calendar, and the blood sacrifice all put together. And this was the national day of atonement for the entire nation of Israel, right? Now, there's more to it. I'm going through this very quickly. I understand that, but that's kind of the purpose here. And thankfully, you can download this as a podcast, or you can grab it off of YouTube or something like that, so that you can review this and listen to it over and over and over again. And I highly encourage you to do that, because if you take these 5 components and you ask the questions that I told you to ask, it will unlock the Bible in ways that you have not anticipated. So let's do a little bit of that. We're running out of time, but let me take what few minutes we have left and try to unpack this for you a little bit, because everything I've just described is in the Old Covenant. It's in the Old Testament under the law of Moses, right? Now, there's a lot more explanation. Right? But if we just simply jump forward to the Gospels and we look at when Jesus walked the earth, okay, as a man, and we take each of these components and we ask, where does Jesus fit into this? Well, this is pretty enlightening, right? Because so where does Jesus fit into the concept of a sacred space? Well, in several locations in the Bible, Jesus says, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. But he was speaking of the temple of his body. In other words, Jesus said that he was the temple of God. All right. So that's very interesting when you look at a lot of his sermons that either took place in the temple or talked about the temple, because he eventually said, I'm the temple, right? So he's contrasting the physical space from himself, right? Now, what does the Bible say about Jesus as a priest? Oh, well, that's very interesting, because the Bible says that Jesus is a high priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. Now, that's off the charts intriguing, because who is Melchizedek? And back to our question, where does it come from, right? Oh, go chase that one down. What is the order of Melchizedek? Now, there's a riddle that will keep you busy for a long time, right? And where does the order of Melchizedek come from? Why is Jesus a member of the order of Melchizedek, right? But he's a high priest. He's a high priest forever, according to the Bible, right? Eternal high priest, okay? Well, what about the sacred code? Where does Jesus fit into the sacred code? Well, that one's pretty easy. John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. Okay. And then later on it says, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, which, by the way, that means Jesus. That does not mean the Bible. That means Jesus. Jesus is the Word of God. Now, the Bible is the Word of God too, in its own particular way. But when the Bible uses, it's interesting, because in the Old Testament, when you read the phrase Word of God, it's usually referring to the Bible. When you use the phrase Word of God in the New Testament, it's almost always referring to Jesus. Check it out. I didn't write it. Don't point your finger at me. Go read it for yourself, right? But Jesus is the Word of God. So here you go, running down our list. Jesus is the sacred space. Jesus is the holy man. Jesus is the sacred code. Right? So you know where this is going. You know where this is headed, because the next one, of course, is the ritual, the calendar. So what does the Bible say about Jesus as part of the sacred calendar? Well, the Bible calls him our Sabbath. It calls Jesus the Sabbath, right? So, for example, in Colossians, we read where it says, therefore, let no one act as your judge in regard to food or drink, or in respect to a festival or a new moon. Okay. So in other words, don't let anybody judge you about Sabbath days, about holy days. Don't let anybody judge you, because these things are a mere shadow of what is to come, but the substance belongs to Christ. In other words, Jesus was and is the fulfillment of all these calendar days. He is the Sabbath day. manifest in the material realm, right? Now seated on the right hand of God, but he is our Sabbath, right? And of course, that brings us to the blood sacrifice. The blood sacrifice. And that one is as plain as it gets. How does Jesus fit into the idea of a blood sacrifice? Well, that is the crucifixion. That is the crux, pun intended, of being a follower of Jesus of Nazareth, of being a follower of Christ, of being a Christian, is that you believe in the bodily death and resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth, that he died, that he was butchered, so to speak, as the Lamb of God. He's called the Lamb of God, and that is for a very specific reason. He's called the Lamb of God, and he was a blood sacrifice, who then was bodily raised from the dead. But you can see how the Bible has progressed from these very literal, earthly, material examples. They have now progressed forward in time to the person of Jesus Christ. And we're running out of time, so I won't go there today, but here's your homework. Now take a look at all of these in the new covenant. So we've answered part of the question, where did they come from? Moving into where are they now? And then now we have to go to, well, where are they going, right? And where they're going is they're going to the new covenant, the New Testament, right? So this is your homework assignment. Take each of those 5 components and look for them in the New Testament. Where do I find the sacred space, the holy man, the sacred code, the sacred calendar, and the blood sacrifice in the new covenant? What does the new covenant say about these things? So, got to wrap it up there, ladies and gentlemen. I really want to thank you for joining me today. My name is Tim Kais. You've been watching or listening to God Save the King on the Truth Be Told radio network, where you can hear my show every Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. God Save the King.